Hey guys, I got a question come in today which I thought was kind of interesting. How much should a beginner budget for a series of classes? Now, it's an interesting question, and think about it carefully. You got a beginner shooter, it's a budget, right? So you're going to be paying money, and then a series of classes. And I mean, the way I look at that, or with what I know about the shooting scene, I wouldn't really go about it that way. Like, you're not going to need a big budget. You don't need to do a whole series of classes quite in that way. I'll talk about that more. No, I mean, if you want, you can take a class, sure, but you don't need to take a whole bunch. Now, what do I mean by, like, you don't necessarily need to take a whole bunch of classes? So obviously, if you're going to go shoot, there's things that you need to know, and there's things that you need to know that are, I mean, it's not stuff that we'd cover or that I'd cover in a class, because it's like, you should probably already know that. I don't really do beginner training, but there's a lot of very good beginner stuff that you need to know. Usually the informal stuff is good enough to get you where you want to go. And what I mean is, you start going to a range, like with a friend, you're going to learn the range procedures, you'll learn basic safety procedures. Just going to a range and shooting a gun, especially like if it's on a line with other people, that's going to expose you to a lot of the things that you need to do. Now, it's not going to be necessarily every piece of like, for example, there's a lot of different target types and different range setups where there can actually be a safety issue on certain ranges, certain targets, certain distances, whatever. Are you going to learn all of the ins and outs of that stuff going and shooting informally? No, I don't think so. You don't learn all the ins and outs, but you can learn like kind of what you need to know, and then, like, again, later on you'll learn more. I don't think you need to go to a long formalized class in order to pick up on all that stuff. Now, that having been said, that's certainly not a bad thing. Like, especially, let's say you're retired, you're kind of getting into shooting later in life, but you're doing pretty good on the money side of the scale. You could go to some place for a week or two and, pay a bunch of money for a series of very basic classes, but that would make sure that all of this stuff that you kind of learn in a more informal setting, if you're doing this for less money or not as part of an agency or an institution, you would make sure that you learn all of that stuff in a very systematic fashion. But again, like, I don't think that's strictly necessary. I'm not sure how much you need to do that. Now, what you do want to look for early on with when you're looking at taking a class or looking at developing, I think you want to build your foundation strong with your shooting. And what I mean is, learn the basics of holding a gun and not doing anything unsafe, and shoot the gun a little bit, and like maybe learn to shoot into a group and kind of understand some basic mechanics. Sure, that's good stuff to do. But then as soon as you can, I think you want to take a more like performance-oriented class. Now, that'll be more work on you. So let's say if you just bought your first handgun, well, you're going to need a holster. Like, you're going to have to practice with that a little bit. You're going to have to reload the gun fabric. There's some other things you'd have to do. But then, again, just with a little bit of informal training with somebody around you, or just by yourself, you would pretty quickly be ready for a formal, like a performance shooting type of course. A good example of that, like Velox training group, like that type of thing, or Joel, or like, it's the same type of thing I do. And if it's not a military or a law enforcement thing, it's a competition shooting skill builder class. Like, once you get your base of knowledge, you should be able to take one class and then have enough concepts that you can practice for an extended period of time. 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever. You don't need to do a class, but if you're going to like do a class to the best possible advantage, you probably want to do it like that, where you know basically what you're doing. You go to the performance shooting class, you get some practice concepts, and you kind of see some stuff live in person. You're like, oh, okay, I could do this, and then you have some material to work with. That's where I see classes be super, super successful. When it gets to where, hey, what do I budget for this whole series of classes and training? That's usually going to be somebody spending too much money to accomplish the thing they're trying to accomplish. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Questions, comments, put them below.